And I just start by saying that that's quite a rare thing to be able to hear and listen to. What Guy was just saying there, the way that he spoke about his emotional relationship to himself is such a rare thing to be able to hear in the veterans community. And that is a great example of the power of psychedelic therapy right there in the first 5 minutes, because it's in my personal experience, but also the people that I work with. There is this great, there's often a very unhealthy relationship with the self among the veterans communities. We are limited in our emotional vulnerability or intelligence, and these plant medicines, from Guy's experience and my own experience, help us to develop this really, really vital relationship. But that's not just true of veterans, you know, that can be seen anywhere in our wider society. So it's just such a lovely thing to be able to hear someone else say these words and these share these experiences. I actually personally share some experiences. I was also a combat veteran, and I served in Afghanistan in 2008. And we had a pretty traumatic period through those 7 months in Afghanistan. It was pretty difficult. We lost a lot of people. Many of my friends died, and a lot more were seriously, life-changingly wounded. And it had a profound impact on me, on my mind. Even though I wasn't physically wounded, I returned home very different, and I suddenly became quite aware of just how anxious I was, but also depressed at the same time. And I was really struggling to adapt to being back home in the UK, having experienced these profoundly traumatic things. And I really couldn't maintain the facade, or that I couldn't endure anymore. And so before too much longer, I realized it was time to leave the military and try something else, try another professional career, but also try and get the help that I clearly needed. And when I asked for the help, what I really got was quite a common answer that I'm hearing, which is, you've got two options. You can have some talking therapies, or you can take pharmaceuticals like antidepressants. Sertraline was the one that I was offered. And that's a very common response that I hear from a lot of veterans in our community. And my personal experience was that talking therapies were valuable, and that it was a good education for my mind and how it behaved, very valuable. But I would never be able to say that talking therapies healed me from the trauma that I'd experienced. I was just a better educated person and more aware of my mind's behavior, which was still very, very valuable. And then pharmaceuticals, my body did not like at all. And they just I always see it that pharmaceuticals simply mask pain, and they put up a boundary between yourself and the pain, or whatever negative thing that you're experiencing. The border just goes up like a blinker, so that you can't see it. You're numbed to it. But if you take that border back down, it still exists. And that's what I found. I found myself slightly numbed by the pharmaceuticals. And then when I came off them, all of the trauma was still there, and I hadn't actually dealt with any of it. None of it had been healed. It had just been masked. So at this same time, I actually left the military and went to work for a large bank in the city here in London. And I thought it was going to be more of a relaxing period, but it wasn't. It was a very intense environment that compounded my emotional and psychological traumas, really. It was very unhealthy for me. And I reached a breaking point. And somehow, into my awareness, I became aware of a medicine in Peru called ayahuasca, which is a native brew, a tea, that's been used by the peoples of the Amazon basin for many, many thousands of years as a medicine. And while I was still working for the bank, I actually took myself off to the jungle, to the Peruvian Amazon basin. And I traveled deep into the jungle and found myself at a little wooden hut with no running water, no electricity. Stayed there by myself for this 10-day period. And a local shaman came to visit me, and he provided me with the ayahuasca, and sat with me while I was having these experiences. And I walked out of that jungle a very different human being to the one that I walked in. I would never say that I was totally healed from those experiences, but they certainly were the catalyst for my journey of personal healing. So I still had a lot of actual work to do, but they've definitely become the catalyst for changing the direction of my life towards one of self-healing and self-love and self-respect, like Guy mentioned earlier. And so on the journey back from the jungle, I really had this conversation. I was like, wow, I've been so profoundly helped by this medicine. Why is this not common knowledge? Certainly among my community, among my friends. I'd known one person that had even heard of it. And so I did a little bit more talking to people, and no one in my circle had heard of it. So I really started to get the passion in me. I was like, well, then, I mean, it exists. So really, sure, it should be done responsibly and safely, and we need to do our research, but there's this thing that exists and it can really help you. It's a shame, yes, that we need to go to Peru as British veterans, but it does exist, and there's something that can actually work. It doesn't shield you or mask you from your pain, but it allows you to start a conversation with yourself about how you might go about healing yourself and whatever that may entail for your personal journey. But I became quite aware that there was no structure, there was no organization where veterans could actually do this. There was no hub, if you will. And so I thought, you know what, then why don't I start it? If not me, who? And then I became aware in America, I was introduced to a guy called Jesse Gould, who's an American ranger. He set up Heroic Hearts Project in the US, which is a charity, much the same as Heroic Hearts UK, is set up to help veterans. And in our case, in the UK, I've dictated that it's open to military and emergency services veterans. We facilitate those veterans in gaining access to psychedelic therapy, be that in Peru, be that in Costa Rica, be that in Netherlands with psilocybin and mushrooms. And so there was this niche, and I went about building a team around me, a very knowledgeable team. Several of the members are here on this conference with us. And so really we're still not a registered charity, I will say that, because COVID has caused delays with the Charities Commission, but our application is being reviewed. And once that happens, then we start raising funds to actually get these guys out to the Netherlands or to Peru. But really, that's just, it's great that we're in a position where we can help veterans right now. But we have to go to some pretty extreme lengths to do that. And it's just, frankly, it's bizarre, and the current rulings on these things, it strikes me as cruel, because it's, as many more knowledgeable people than me know, it's not based on science. There's some personal opinion. It feels like some personal opinion has influenced these decisions, and there's no science that has influenced it at all, because there's overwhelming anecdotal evidence, and now there's developing clinical evidence that is suggesting we need to really be serious in the way that we look at these medicines here in the UK, because I shouldn't have to be raising funds to take veterans all the way over to Peru. We shouldn't need to do that. We shouldn't even have to go to the Netherlands, to Amsterdam, to get the healing that we need. There are hundreds of thousands of veterans, military and emergency services in this country, that are in a desperate place, and even if it's not that bad, they're still unhappy with their life. And it's my belief that these medicines can help in a significant, if not a profound way. And so that's where we find ourselves. We're working alongside you guys there at Drug Science, and we're trying to raise awareness that this is effective and safe, and that it's valid. It's a valid therapy, and that we should have the right to access it. And here our journey begins, really. We're still at the very beginning, but it's very promising. Momentum is building every day. It's quite shocking, the level of momentum that we've got. And so it's very exciting times, very exciting. We have got, at Heroic Hearts UK, we've got a great team. Again, you're going to hear from several of them today. So I'd like to thank them publicly for their support.